Hi, I'm Bill Bentley. My wife Ann Wilhelm and I are going to talk to you about Wilhelm Farm. In particular, we're going to talk about our agroforestry demonstrations, which are funded by the Natural Resource Conservation Service through a Conservation Innovation Grant. Wilhelm Farm dates back to at least the 1820s. May have actually been started sometime in the late 1700s, but we know that a house was built by North Granby Road somewhere in the 1820 to 1830 period of time. Around the Civil War, the farmhouse was pulled apart. It's a post and beam structure and moved up the hill where it currently stands. And in fact, that post and beam structure is the internal core of the current house. In 1936, Oscar and Marie Wilhelm purchased the farm and moved their two boys, Fred and Lloyd, to Granby, Connecticut. They proceeded to develop a strong subsistence unit that provided food for their family and some other members of the broader extended family. Over the next few years, Oscar and his sons planted a lot of white pine, they fenced pastures, and did other improvements as they moved to operating this farm as a subsistence unit for the family during the mid and late Depression. In 1954, Wilhelm Farm had gone far enough with its forestry activities to qualify for being one of the first 10 tree farm licenses in Connecticut. In 1962, Fred and Edith acquired the farm after Fred's parents passed away. Over the next 40 years, several forest stand improvement activities, mainly firewood harvesting, were conducted, and the forest generally improved, the pastures managed, and large vegetable gardens established. In 1992, the 5 Wilhelm children encouraged their parents to donate a conservation easement, which they did to the Granby Land Trust. The first formal forest stewardship plan was written 2 years later, and in 1997, the first timber harvest, which was strongly based on those planted white pines from 1936, 37, 38. 2003, Ann and I purchased the farm and forest from Fred and Edith. By 2017, we had conducted several conservation improvements, and we were granted a Conservation Innovation Grant by the Natural Resource Conservation Service to begin building a demonstration farm. Wilhelm Farm is 45.6 acres, over 35 of which is forest or woods, 9 acres in pasture and fields, and 1.2 acres in house and barns. I'm going to discuss the wooded portion, roughly the back 2/3 of the farm. Then Ann will follow with a discussion of the fields, pastures, and the civil pasture unit. We're going to talk about the roughly 35 acres of woods. The front part of the woods towards the rest of the farm is mainly white pine. The mid part is a mix of hardwoods and hemlocks, includes bottomlands along Mountain Brook. And then as we go to the other side, you start climbing abruptly as the Berkshire Shield comes out of the ground and you're in granitic landscape with highly productive hardwood soils. Stand 5, which is at the eastern edge of the wooded area, is our civil pasture unit, and it's going to be somewhat larger than what's shown on this map. We have harvested 3 times from this property and taken off about 450,000 board feet, 3/4 of which was white pine. In the picture here, you see Ann, who's about 5 feet tall, and the size of some of these logs when they were stacked up in the winter of 2015. Along with the white pine were hardwoods, mainly red oak, sugar maple, red maple, and birch. The silvicultural system we use, or the type of system of harvesting, is a mixed shelter wood to favor multi-age and multi-height forest for bird habitat, particularly for songbirds. In any of the areas where we had regeneration failure or open areas in the woods, we had substantial brush growth. Multiflora rose, native grape, barberry, blackberry, and other brush species dominated these openings. The shade from the brush plus moisture competition blocked tree and grass regeneration. Using an EQIP grant from Natural Resource Conservation Service and our own match efforts, we brought in a tiger cat to mow this brush and open it up for replanting or the creation of our silvopasture unit. We are working with Connecticut Audubon on birds in the forest, and this is a project sponsored in part by the United States Forest Service with Audubon to encourage conservation-minded landowners to improve their forested landscape to attract birds. The key is the structure, the multi-heights, multi-age, and a diversity of species. You can see the areas in Connecticut that are forested that they are looking at. I believe that they've got well over 50 ownerships involved in this at this point in time. We have a riparian zone where Mountain Brook crosses our property. We did cross this brook once in 1996 to do logging with a temporary bridge that was approved by the Inland Wetlands Commission. The bridge was dismantled immediately following the logging. We've had no logging crossings since then. In 2014, we skidded the logs out through an adjacent property. This is an area of very productive soil. It's an alluvial area and has considerable potential. Right now we are testing it for growing ramps, fiddlehead, and other forest farming opportunities. Aesthetics, spiritual renewal, and recreation have always been important reasons for owning this property. They were for Fred and Edith, for Oscar and Marie before them, and now for us, our children. So on this, we have good solid wood trails that have been widened and firmed up by our logging operations. We have the spiritual impact of putting Fred and Lloyd's ashes on the property. Recreation, hiking, camping, children's play, and hunting permits by some friends who come in each year with some with guns, some with bows, to hunt deer primarily, but also turkey. So it serves a broad range of non-economic purposes.
So as Bill indicated, I'm going to talk about the front portion of the farm, which includes the hay and the pasture land, the house, the outbuildings, the garden areas, basically the land that has historically been more intensively managed and cultivated. My parents always had a large garden while I was growing up, but farming was not their primary livelihood. The farm provided food for both our own large family and for my uncle's family. My parents sold strawberries for cash from a card table set up by the road, and later on sold vegetables at a local farmer's market. They kept a flock of laying hens and sold eggs. They kept a few beef animals of various ages and a milk cow or two. They also raised a couple of pigs each year. They had various arrangements with neighbors over the years to get the hay baled, the animals butchered, and manure spread. So when Bill and I returned to Granby in 1990, I was interested in developing a market garden and in reviving the town's farmers market. We ran a roadside farm stand for over 20 years, and this farm enterprise served us well. This enterprise provided a number of benefits in addition to the cash that it brought in. With my working on the farm, we saved money on daycare and commuting costs, and we saved on grocery bills. Had I been earning the income to purchase these services from others, we also would have had to pay taxes on that income. So we paid wages to our children, which helped teach them the value of work, and also allowed us to move money from the farm to their college savings accounts, which helped from a tax perspective. There are many intangible benefits, like the pleasure of being home with your children, of my children interacting regularly with their grandparents, the satisfaction of producing and preserving much of your own food, of building ties to the community and serving a community function. There are people that still miss our vegetable stand. So we are now in a time of transition regarding the farm. During the 20-plus years that we ran the vegetable stand, we raised our children. Early on, my parents were a great help to us, but over the years the balance has shifted and they now require our assistance. Our boys grew from babies into strong, reliable workers, but now they're both grown and we are empty nesters. Bill retired about halfway through this time of running the farm stand, and he has gradually moved from part-time consulting work to full retirement. During these same years, I completed an MBA and began working full-time off-farm. The dairy farmer with whom we've had a long relationship is also aging. While he still uses the hay fields and maintains their fertility, we no longer have any livestock on the farm, neither his nor our own. As Bill described, the landscape filled in. The pine forest planted by my grandfather, dad, and uncle matured and has been harvested 3 times. Multiflora rose, Japanese barberry, blackberries, Asian bittersweet, and other nuisance plants have come in at every opportunity. The good news is that without livestock, we've been working on clearing out the old hedgerows and taking out old fence lines. This, combined with the logging that was done in the 2014 to 15 winter and the mowing done by the tiger cat to clear out some of the invasives, has reopened the landscape and allowed me to see the land in different ways, to observe larger patterns, and to envision how the land may be reconfigured. As Bill and I look to the future and consider ongoing changes in our lives and in the world around us, we have been developing a plan for the types of agricultural activities we will engage in and how the land will be used. Years ago, I heard someone who worked in agricultural development use an analogy of the fox and the hedgehog to compare small-scale farmers and the mixed farming systems that are common in less developed parts of the world to large-scale industrial farms and the farmers who practice so-called modern agricultural methods. The origin of the fox and the hedgehog comparison traces back to the Greek poet Archilochus, who wrote, "The fox knows many things, but the hedgehog knows one big thing." The small, diversified farmer must behave like a fox. The fox sees the world as a constantly shifting mixture of threats and opportunities, and the fox draws on a variety of past experiences to plan its next move and its survival. Given everything that Bill and I are trying to balance, including continuing the legacy of conservation and stewardship, and external factors like global climate change, we will need to be like foxes. Food production remains an important component of what we hope to accomplish along with the goals of our forest stewardship plan. New England currently produces less than 10% of its food. New England Food Solutions developed a regional food vision in which New England could meet 50% of its food needs by the year 2060. The Wildlands and Woodlands vision calls for a 50-year effort to conserve 70% of New England as forest, permanently free from development. It's a vision for the next half-century and beyond that is, quote, intended to safeguard the basic green infrastructure and natural services we need in the face of significant economic and environmental stresses we face now and those sure to come. The future will require more resilient food systems, and small farms will play an important role in assuring community and regional food security and in maintaining environmental quality. From a public health perspective, there are strong ties between healthy diets and improved individual health. Providing everyone with access to healthy foods will reduce societal health care costs and improve the quality of life for many. So as we consider a whole farm approach to our planning, we see our farm fitting well into this future, with its mixture of forested land and land that is better suited to intensive cultivation of food crops. We plan to introduce several agroforestry practices onto our farm. Silvopasture, which is the simultaneous cultivation of trees with forage crops for animals. Forest farming, to include the cultivation of mushrooms, ramps, and fiddlehead ferns. And alley cropping. So how are we beginning to move forward? A shortage of labor has been a primary issue for us, while access to land is a problem for many people who are interested in farming. After several years of seeking a collaborator and sporadically listing our property on Connecticut FarmLink, we have found a compatible person, someone who shares our interests and long-term vision for the property. Sven Peel will begin working with us this year, using our land initially to grow annual vegetables and reopening the farm stand. Over the coming year, we will work on a land use plan for more permanent agriculture. We are currently working out the lease arrangements, including a longer-term agroforestry lease, which is a fairly new tool in the U.S., but has been used in other countries. Sven will be helping us to develop a whole farm plan. Through the intentional design of the agro-ecosystem, we plan to mimic natural ecosystems. Our long-term goal is to become a demonstration and teaching farm where people can come and see, learn, and be inspired to try on their own properties some of the things that we are doing on ours. Through the internet and social media, we hope to reach an even broader audience than just those who live in driving proximity to the farm. Why does the story of Wilhelm Farm matter? It's because our story is in no way unique. Our stewardship goals, our desire to continue a legacy of conservation and to pass this on to our children, the obstacles that we face financially to continue to afford to hold this land, and physically to manage it as we age. These goals and problems are shared by many others. 50% of the forest in Connecticut is held by 140,000 families. Of this family-held land, 66% is held in parcels greater than 10 acres, with an average parcel size of 34 acres. 87% of these family forest owners are over aged 50. This story should also matter to the general public. Parcelization and fragmentation of the land are issues not just in Connecticut. At a national level, an estimated 11 million private forest owners collectively control 50% of the forest land, approximately 423 million acres in the United States. Family forest owners account for 35% of all forested land in the U.S. Other private owners include land trusts, schools, clubs, etc. Parcelization and fragmentation of the forest pose real threats, particularly since at a national level, 1 in 5 acres of forest land is owned by someone who is at least 75 years old. The sustained provision of all the social goods and services that forests provide depends on functional, intact forest landscapes. As forests become more parcelized and fragmented, effective outreach to landowners becomes more difficult. In a 2011 report by the Global Institute for Sustainable Forestry, they state that though family forest owners collectively represent a significant player in the forestry sector, a relatively small proportion of them engage in systematic management practices designed to ensure sustainability. This is the background that led us to apply for a Conservation Innovation Grant with NRCS. We will be working on this grant for the next 2 years. You can follow our work on our website, Facebook page, and Instagram feed.